You see absolutely everything if you only bother to look. Most people don't. That, right there, is the entire story. Everything else is just details. My name is Ethan Carter, I'm a single dad, and my daughter Lily is 7 years old. She's the reason I drive bus route 12 every morning. The schedule matches hers perfectly. I'm home when she's home. I've never missed a school play, a soccer game, a bad dream, or a scraped knee. Her mother and I separated years ago. No villains. No dramatic betrayal. Just two decent people who eventually realized they wanted different lives. Lily spends time with both of us, and the weeks she's with me are the best weeks I know. So that's me, a bus driver, a father, a man who made peace a long time ago with being invisible to people who measure worth by titles, bank accounts, and business cards. Then, about 18 months ago, there was a boy named Sam Frost. He joined my route on a gray Monday morning in late October, 6 years old, small for his age, brown hair, serious eyes, and without question the quietest child I had ever seen. Not shy quiet, not polite quiet, something heavier than that. A silence that seemed to sit on his shoulders like a backpack he couldn't take off. Every morning he climbed onto my bus without a word. Every morning he sat in the exact same seat. Third row back, right side, against the window, and every single ride, he stared outside as if he was waiting for something that wasn't coming back. I learned his story the way bus drivers learn most things. A piece from one parent, a piece from a teacher, a piece from a school aide. Sam's father had died suddenly almost 2 years earlier, a traffic accident. One ordinary afternoon that split a little boy's life into before and after. Everyone said Sam had been loud before that. Funny, curious, the kind of kid who asked questions about everything. Then the accident happened, and the words disappeared. The doctors called it selective mutism brought on by trauma. Maybe they were right, but medical terms don't tell you what it's like to watch a 6-year-old stare out a window every day for 18 months. They don't tell you what it feels like when a child carries grief that looks too heavy for his body. Sam's mother was Amelia Frost. Most people in the city knew her name. She was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the country. Rich, powerful, successful, the kind of woman magazines like to put on covers, and by all accounts, she loved her son fiercely. She hired specialists, therapists, tutors, child psychologists, every expert money could buy. None of it worked. Sam remained silent, day after day, month after month. Now here's the important part, the only part that really matters. I never tried to fix him, because everybody else already was. Everyone around that kid was carrying the same desperate energy. Please be okay. Please talk. Please come back to us. Please stop scaring us. Children feel that. They feel every ounce of pressure adults place on them. They feel when they're being treated like a problem instead of a person, so I never did it. Every morning when Sam stepped onto my bus, I simply said, "Morning, Sam. Good to see you." That was it. No questions, no expectations, no tests, no concern disguised as conversation, just acknowledgement. I see you. You matter. Have a seat. Every afternoon I greeted him exactly the same way. There he is. Welcome back, partner. Then I drove the route. That's all. Weeks passed. Then months. Sam never answered. Not once. And honestly, that was fine. Because the goal wasn't to make him talk. The goal was to let him exist without feeling broken. One rainy Thursday morning, about 6 months after he joined my route, something happened. Not a miracle. Just a moment. We stopped near Maple Street to let a golden retriever cross with an elderly woman. The dog moved at the speed of continental drift. The kids on the bus groaned dramatically. I laughed and said, "Take your time, buddy. We're not in a race." A few students laughed. Then, from the third row on the right side, I heard something. Tiny, barely audible. A laugh, 1 second. Then silence again. I checked the mirror. Sam was staring out the window exactly like always. But for the first time, I knew he was still in there. And for reasons I couldn't explain, that felt important. What I didn't know was that someone else had noticed too. Someone who had been watching very carefully from a black SUV parked across the street. Someone who happened to be one of the most powerful CEOs in America. And before this story was over, That woman was going to walk into my life because of a little boy who hadn't spoken in almost 2 years. Tieptheo. Part 2. Part 2. About 3 weeks after I heard that tiny laugh on the bus, I met Amelia Frost for the first time. Not formally. Not under ideal circumstances. It happened because of a dog. Looking back, an astonishing number of important moments in life seem to happen because of dogs. It was a cold Tuesday afternoon in November. The sky was threatening rain, and the last elementary school stop of the day was running a few minutes behind schedule. As I pulled up to Maple Street, I noticed something unusual. Sam wasn't looking out the window. He was looking down the road, focused, alert, waiting. The moment the bus stopped, I saw what had captured his attention. A golden retriever puppy had somehow escaped a nearby yard and was happily wandering down the sidewalk, dragging half a leash behind him. The dog looked thrilled with himself. The elderly woman chasing him looked significantly less thrilled. Before I could react, the puppy darted directly toward the street. Brakes squealed. A delivery van stopped hard. The woman shouted. Several kids on the bus gasped. Without thinking, I set the parking brake and jumped out. The puppy chose that exact moment to sprint into the middle of the road. Of course he did. I managed to intercept him just before he reached traffic. The dog immediately rolled onto his back and demanded belly rubs as though we were lifelong friends. "You're a menace," I informed him. His tail wagged in agreement. The elderly woman finally caught up, breathing heavily. "Thank you. No problem." I handed her the leash. She smiled. "This one belongs to my granddaughter." The puppy barked proudly. I suspected he considered this entire event a success. By the time I climbed back onto the bus, most of the kids were laughing and talking about the dog. Most of them, not all. Sam sat in his usual seat, but something was different. He wasn't staring out the window anymore. He was looking at me, directly. The eye contact lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then he looked away. Yet somehow it felt significant. Later that evening, after finishing my route and picking up Lily from her mother's house, I stopped at a small grocery store. Lily spent 15 minutes debating the moral implications of choosing between 2 cereal brands. We were halfway through this critical negotiation when someone called my name. "Mr. Carter?" I turned around. A woman stood near the produce section, tall, elegant, dark hair, expensive coat, the kind of person who looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. I recognized her immediately. Amelia Frost. She looked different from television interviews, less polished, more tired, more human. "Miss Frost." She smiled politely. "Please call me Amelia." Lily glanced between us suspiciously. "Dad, do you know a famous person?" Amelia laughed. "Apparently she does." I felt my daughter inch slightly closer to me. Lily had inherited my tendency to study people before trusting them. Amelia noticed. "You must be Lily." My daughter nodded. "You own a company." Amelia blinked. "I do. A really big one, I've been told." Lily considered that. "Okay." Then she returned to comparing cereal boxes. Amelia watched her for a moment before looking back at me. "She's wonderful." "I agree." Something softened in Amelia's expression. Then she hesitated. "Actually, I wanted to thank you." I frowned. "For what?" "Sam." Silence followed. Not awkward. Careful. Amelia folded her arms. "His teacher told me about the dog." I smiled. News travels fast. Not that part. Another pause. The laugh. My heart skipped slightly. Amelia looked away for a second, composing herself. It was the first time anyone had heard him laugh in months. The grocery store suddenly seemed quieter, smaller somehow. "Oh." She nodded. The teacher noticed it when the other children were talking afterward. Another pause. "She called me. I didn't know what to say." Amelia smiled sadly. "You probably don't realize how much that meant." I looked toward Lily, who was now attempting advanced serial mathematics. I wasn't trying to accomplish anything. Amelia's eyes met mine. I know. Something changed in her expression when she said it. Relief, maybe. Gratitude. The kind that comes from finally meeting someone who isn't trying to solve a problem. Most people see Sam and immediately start trying to help. I nodded slowly. "That must get exhausting." Amelia laughed quietly. "You have no idea." For a few moments, neither of us spoke. Then she asked a question. Why don't you push him? Because everybody else does. Her eyes widened slightly. Exactly. Silence followed. Then Amelia smiled for real. The first genuine smile I'd seen from her. Thank you. I shrugged. He's a good kid. He is. Another pause. He just doesn't know how to come back yet. The words stayed with me long after she left. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I found myself thinking about Amelia Frost. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, not the woman from magazine covers, just a mother who missed hearing her son laugh. And for the first time, I wondered how lonely that kind of success must feel. What I didn't know was that Amelia had gone home that evening and made a decision that would bring her into my world far more often than either of us expected. Because after 18 months of specialists, therapists, and experts, her silent little boy had responded to exactly one person, and Amelia Frost intended to find out why. The first invitation arrived 4 days later. Amelia Frost called just after dinner while Lily and I were building a cardboard volcano that looked less like a science project and more like a safety violation. "Dad," Lily announced proudly, holding up a bottle of vinegar, "this one is definitely going to explode. That's exactly what concerns me." My phone rang before she could continue her campaign of scientific destruction. Amelia's name appeared on the screen. I answered, "Hello? Hi, Ethan." Her voice sounded hesitant. That surprised me. People like Amelia Frost usually sounded certain about everything. "Is this a bad time?" I glanced at Lily, who was now trying to attach glitter to a volcano, "Potentially, but not because of you." Amelia laughed softly. "Good to know." Then a brief silence followed. "Actually, I wanted to ask a favor." I sat down at the kitchen table. "Okay." Another pause. "Sam has a school event tomorrow. That's nice. He's refusing to go." My smile faded slightly. "Ah, the teacher thinks he's anxious." Another pause. "I think he's terrified." I understood immediately. Crowds, expectations, questions, all the things adults tend to create without realizing it. Amelia continued, "This is going to sound strange. Probably. Would you come?" I blinked. "What? Not as a guest?" Another pause. "Just be there." The request caught me completely off guard. "Amelia, I'm a bus driver. I know. I'm not a therapist. I know. I'm not qualified to help." Her answer came instantly. Maybe that's why. Silence followed. I didn't know how to respond. Finally I asked, "What exactly do you think I can do?" Amelia's voice softened. "Nothing." Another pause. "And that's the point." The next afternoon I found myself standing near the back of an elementary school gymnasium, wondering how my life had become so strange. Parents filled folding chairs. Teachers organized students. Children ran everywhere with the unlimited energy only kids seemed to possess. The annual community showcase was exactly the kind of event designed to overwhelm a child like Sam. I spotted him almost immediately. He stood beside Amelia near the wall, shoulders tense, hands in his pockets. Watching the room like he was preparing for battle, Amelia noticed me first. Relief flashed across her face. Not dramatic, just enough. Then Sam saw me. For a moment nothing happened. Then something remarkable did. He relaxed. Not completely, not magically, just a little. Enough that I noticed. Enough that Amelia noticed too. She looked away quickly, as if afraid to hope. The event lasted nearly 2 hours. I spent most of it talking with teachers and helping Lily explain why her volcano deserved scientific recognition despite covering half the display table in red foam. Through it all, Sam stayed near the edge of the room, quiet, watchful, present, which, according to Amelia later, was already progress. As people began leaving, I felt someone tug gently on my jacket sleeve. I looked down. Sam. He immediately looked toward the floor. Neither of us spoke. Then he held out something in his hand, a small folded piece of paper. I accepted it carefully. Sam nodded once, then walked back toward his mother. That was it. No words, no dramatic breakthrough, just a folded piece of paper. I opened it later that night after Lily had fallen asleep. Inside was a drawing. Crayon. Slightly crooked. A yellow school bus beneath a bright blue sky. Me standing beside it. Lily waving from a window. and next to the bus stood a smaller figure with brown hair. Sam. Above the drawing, written in careful, uneven letters, were 3 words. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." I stared at those words for a very long time, because after 18 months of silence, Sam Frost had spoken, not with his voice, but with his heart. The next morning, Amelia was waiting at the bus stop when I arrived. Her eyes looked tired, like she hadn't slept. When the children boarded, she stayed behind. Sam took his usual seat. 3rd row, right side, against the window, but before sitting down, he paused beside me, just for a second. Then he nodded, a tiny gesture, easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. I nodded back. "Morning, partner." For the first time ever, the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. A smile, barely visible. Then he sat down. When I looked back toward the sidewalk, Amelia was crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just standing there with tears running down her face while trying desperately not to let her son see. I understood immediately. Because sometimes the smallest victories feel the biggest when you've waited long enough for them. What neither Amelia nor I realized was that this wasn't the beginning of Sam's recovery. It was the beginning of something much larger. Something that would slowly pull a powerful CEO and an ordinary single father into each other's lives until neither of us remembered what life looked like before. Over the next few weeks, something changed. Not dramatically. Not in the way movies like to portray healing. There were no miraculous speeches, no emotional scenes where Sam suddenly found his voice and everything became perfect. Real life doesn't work that way. Real healing is usually quieter, slower, almost invisible unless you're paying attention. Fortunately, paying attention happened to be my specialty. The first change was that Sam stopped staring out the window all the time. He still sat in the 3rd row on the right side, still preferred silence, still avoided attention whenever possible. But now he watched the bus too, the other kids, the conversations, the little dramas that unfold whenever 20 elementary school students share the same vehicle twice a day. The second change involved Lily. My daughter has never met a social boundary she couldn't accidentally bulldoze through. Most children treated Sam's silence carefully. Lily treated it like weather, something that existed but wasn't particularly important. One afternoon she climbed into the seat across from him and launched into a detailed explanation about why dinosaurs would have been terrible pets. Sam listened. Lily continued. 20 minutes later she was still talking. Sam still hadn't said a word. When the bus reached her stop, Lily stood up and smiled. "See you tomorrow." Then she left. The next day she did it again, and the day after that, and the day after that. Eventually I asked why. Lily looked genuinely confused by the question. "Because he's my friend, he doesn't talk to you." So? Fair point. Children often understand things adults complicate. Around that same time, Amelia began riding the route occasionally. Not on the bus. She would follow in her car from a distance during certain mornings. The first time I noticed, I assumed something was wrong. The second time, I realized she was watching Sam. The third time, I realized she was watching all of us. One Friday afternoon, after the last stop, she approached the bus as I finished my route. "You're creating a problem." I laughed. "That doesn't sound like a compliment." Amelia smiled. "It isn't." Then she glanced toward the empty seats. "Now Sam wants to come to school." Silence followed. "That sounds terrible." "Exactly." She folded her arms. "Do you know how much money I spent trying to accomplish that? Probably too much." Amelia laughed softly. Then her expression grew serious. "He's different here." I looked around the empty bus. Worn seats, scuffed floors, crayon marks nobody could fully remove. Hardly a therapeutic masterpiece. "It's just a bus." Amelia shook her head. "No." Another pause. "It's a place where nobody expects anything from him." That stayed with me, because she was right. Every office, every clinic, every appointment came with goals, progress reports, measurements, expectations. The bus was different. On the bus, Sam was simply a kid riding home from school. Nothing more. Nothing less. One rainy afternoon in December, I witnessed something even more surprising. 2 older boys began arguing near the back of the bus. Nothing serious. Just the kind of disagreement that seems life-changing when you're 10. Voices rose. Tempers flared. The usual chaos. I was already preparing to intervene when I heard it. A single word. Quiet, clear, undeniable. Stop. The entire bus froze. So did I. Every child turned toward the third row on the right side. Sam sat perfectly still, eyes wide, as if he couldn't believe the sound had come from him either. Silence filled the bus. Complete silence. Then one of the boys shrugged. Okay, argument over. Just like that. Nobody celebrated. Nobody pointed. Nobody made a scene. I made sure of it. I simply kept driving. Yet when I checked the mirror a few seconds later, I saw something remarkable. Sam wasn't looking out the window anymore. He was looking at the other children, and they were looking back. Not with pity, not with concern, just acceptance. Later that evening, my phone rang. Amelia, again. The school called. I smiled. News travels fast. Her voice sounded different, lighter somehow. He spoke. He did. Silence followed. Then I heard something unexpected. Amelia laughing and crying at the same time. You know what's funny? She asked. What? I spent 2 years trying to get him to talk. Another pause. And the first thing he says is stop. I laughed. Good choice, honestly. She laughed harder. For several moments neither of us spoke. Then Amelia asked quietly, how do you do it? I leaned back in my chair. Do what? Help people. The question caught me off guard. Because I didn't think I was helping anyone. I drive a bus, Ethan. Her voice softened. You know, that's not what I mean. I stared out the window toward the dark street outside. Finally, I answered honestly. I think people heal faster when they don't feel broken. Silence followed. Long silence. Then Amelia whispered, I've spent 2 years treating him like he needed fixing. No. I shook my head even though she couldn't see it. You've spent 2 years loving your son. Another pause. There's a difference. Neither of us spoke after that, because sometimes the truth arrives so quietly that the only appropriate response is silence. What I didn't know was that someone else had been paying attention to all these changes, someone inside Amelia's company, someone who believed her growing connection with an ordinary bus driver was becoming a problem, and before Christmas arrived, that person was going to make a mistake that would push Amelia and me much closer together than either of us expected. Tip Theo. Part 5. Part 5. The problem arrived 3 days before Christmas in the form of a man named Victor Lang. I didn't know his name at the time. I only knew that he wore an expensive coat, drove an expensive car, and looked deeply offended by the existence of ordinary people. The first time I saw him, he was standing outside Maple Elementary, waiting for Amelia. His expression suggested he would rather be anywhere else on earth. Sam noticed him too. The change was immediate. One moment he was laughing quietly at something Lily had said. The next, he went completely still. Not silent. Still. There's a difference. Children don't hide fear very well if you know what you're looking for. I watched him through the mirror as he climbed off the bus. His shoulders tightened. His eyes dropped toward the sidewalk. By the time he reached Amelia, the progress of the last several weeks seemed to vanish. The entire thing bothered me, more than it should have. That evening, Amelia called. Her voice sounded exhausted. Bad day? I asked. She laughed once. Not because anything was funny. You could say that. Silence followed. Then she sighed. Do you remember me mentioning my board of directors? Vaguely. Victor Lang is the chairman. Ah. Suddenly things made more sense. The guy with the expensive coat? Amelia sounded surprised. You noticed him? Hard not to. Another pause. He makes tax audits seem approachable. Amelia laughed despite herself. That's actually very accurate. Then her voice became quieter. He thinks I'm distracted. I frowned. From work? From everything. Silence followed, including you. There it was. I leaned back in my chair. That's ridiculous. I know. Another pause. Unfortunately, Victor rarely lets facts interfere with his opinions. I wasn't particularly worried. People like Victor Lang existed everywhere. Successful, arrogant, convinced they understood other people's lives better than those people did. Normally, I ignored them. Unfortunately, Victor wasn't finished. 2 days later, I found out just how unfinished he was. The school winter festival took place on a Thursday evening. Every classroom had decorations. Parents carried cameras. Children consumed enough sugar to threaten public safety. Standard holiday procedures. Lily spent most of the night running between activities, while pretending jackets were optional in December. Sam stayed close to Amelia, not hiding, not withdrawing, just observing. Progress. Real progress. I was helping move folding chairs when I heard raised voices near the gym entrance, not shouting. The polished version of an argument rich people have when they're trying not to make a scene. I recognized Amelia immediately. The man facing her was Victor. "You're making emotional decisions," he said. Amelia folded her arms. "I'm attending a school event. That's not what I mean." Silence followed. Several nearby parents pretended not to listen while absolutely listening. Victor continued. "The board is concerned." Amelia laughed sharply. "The board is concerned because my son smiled? The board is concerned because perception matters." There it was. Perception, the favorite word of people who value appearances over reality. Amelia's expression hardened. "Be careful." Victor ignored the warning. "You're spending an awful lot of time around a bus driver." The gym suddenly became very quiet. I wasn't close enough to hear every word, but I heard that one. Bus driver. The way he said it carried all the respect usually reserved for gum stuck to a shoe. Amelia looked genuinely angry now. "His name is Ethan." Victor shrugged. "My point exactly." Several parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Then something unexpected happened. A small voice cut through the silence. "Stop." The entire room froze. Victor turned. Amelia turned. I turned. Everyone turned. Sam stood beside his mother, hands clenched, face pale, but standing. Standing tall. Victor stared at him. Sam swallowed hard, then repeated himself. Louder this time. "Stop." Complete silence followed. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Because everyone understood what had just happened. After nearly 2 years of silence, after months of careful progress, after countless struggles, Sam Frost had spoken in front of an entire room full of people, not because someone asked him to, not because a therapist encouraged him, not because a specialist guided him, because someone he cared about was being hurt. Amelia's eyes filled with tears immediately. Victor looked stunned, truly stunned. Sam stepped closer to his mother. Then, with visible effort, he forced out 4 more words, 4 words that changed everything. "He's my friend." Silence exploded across the gymnasium. Amelia covered her mouth. Several teachers began crying openly. One parent actually applauded before realizing nobody else was moving. I stood there completely speechless, because sometimes courage doesn't look loud. Sometimes it looks like a little boy speaking 6 words after 2 years of silence. Victor seemed to realize he had just become the villain in a story nobody wanted him in. He muttered something about a misunderstanding and left almost immediately. Nobody tried to stop him. The moment the door closed behind him, Amelia dropped to one knee in front of her son. "Hey," her voice trembled. "Hey, buddy." Sam looked nervous now, as though he couldn't quite believe what he'd done. Amelia smiled through tears. "I'm proud of you." Sam stared at her for a second. Then, very quietly, he said, "Okay." One word. One simple word. Yet I would remember the sound of it for the rest of my life. Later that night, after the festival ended and the children had gone home, Amelia found me in the parking lot. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally she laughed softly. Well. She shook her head. "He talked." "He did." Another pause. Then she looked directly at me. "You know this isn't about therapy anymore, right?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" Amelia smiled. Not the CEO smile. Not the public smile. The real one. Warm. Honest. Dangerous in ways I wasn't prepared for. I think he came back because he finally felt safe. The words settled between us beneath the glow of the parking lot lights, and for reasons I couldn't explain, neither of us looked away. What I didn't know then was that Christmas was only a week away, and before the year ended, Amelia Frost was about to make a decision that would change all 3 of our lives forever. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in snow, silence, and the kind of anticipation that only children can create. Lily had been awake since 5:30 in the morning despite repeated explanations that Santa generally preferred people to remain asleep. By 8 o'clock, she had already checked the presents twice, reorganized the ornaments on our tree, and informed me that patience was overrated. "You're impossible," I told her. "That's what you always say." "Because it's always true." She grinned and returned to decorating a gingerbread house that now contained more candy than actual gingerbread. Normally, Christmas Eve was simple, just Lily and me. Hot chocolate, movies, board games, quiet traditions built over years of single parenthood. This year felt different, not because I wanted it to, because life had apparently decided I wasn't in charge anymore. Around noon, my phone rang. Amelia. I smiled before answering. "Hey." "Hi." Her voice sounded hesitant. That immediately got my attention. Amelia Frost negotiated billion-dollar deals without hesitation. The fact that she sounded nervous meant something mattered. "Everything okay?" Silence followed. Then she laughed softly. "That's actually what I was calling to ask you." "I'm fine." "Good." Another pause. "Would you and Lily like to come to dinner tonight?" I blinked. "Dinner?" "Yes." "At your house?" "Last time I checked." I sat down slowly. Across the room, Lily was pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. Amelia continued. Sam asked. "That changed everything." "Oh, apparently he has strong opinions." I laughed. "I'm learning that." Another pause. Then Amelia's voice softened. "He wants his friend there." I knew exactly which friend she meant, and somehow that simple fact made the decision easy. By 6 o'clock, Lily and I stood outside Amelia's house. Calling it a house felt dishonest. The place looked like something architects created after winning arguments. Large windows, stone walls, beautiful landscaping covered in fresh snow, the kind of property people usually see in magazines. Lily stared upward. "Wow, remember your manners." I'm staring politely. "Fair enough." The front door opened before we reached it. Sam stood there. Not Amelia. Sam. For a second, nobody moved. Then he looked directly at Lily. "Hi." One word. Clear. Natural. Lily's eyes widened. Then she smiled. "Hi." That was it. No dramatic reaction. No celebration. No tears. Just two children greeting each other. Somehow that made it even more powerful. Inside, the evening felt surprisingly normal. Amelia had decorated the house beautifully. Lights glowed from every room. A massive Christmas tree stood near the fireplace. Music played softly in the background. Yet despite all the luxury, the atmosphere felt warm instead of impressive, lived in instead of displayed. During dinner, Sam spoke occasionally. Not much. A few words here, a sentence there. Every single time, Amelia's eyes softened. She tried very hard not to react, which told me how badly she wanted to. Lily, meanwhile, treated the entire thing as completely ordinary. By dessert, she had somehow convinced Sam to help build an elaborate blanket fort in the living room. The two disappeared upstairs with enough pillows to concern structural engineers. Amelia and I finally found ourselves alone in the kitchen. For several moments, neither of us spoke. The distant sound of children laughing drifted through the house. Then Amelia leaned against the counter and smiled. "Thank you." I shook my head. "You keep thanking me for things, because you keep deserving it." Silence followed. I looked toward the staircase. "He's doing great." Amelia nodded. "He is." Another pause. "You know what's strange?" "What?" She laughed softly. "For 2 years I kept waiting for someone to save him." Silence. Then I realized he was saving himself the entire time. I smiled. "Kids are tougher than we think. Some are." Her eyes met mine. "Some just need someone to believe they'll come back." The room grew quiet. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Then Amelia surprised me. "Victor resigned yesterday." I blinked. "Really?" She nodded. The board wasn't thrilled about the school incident. I tried not to smile. Failed. Amelia laughed. "Don't look so pleased." "I'm only a little pleased." "Liar." We both laughed. The sound felt easy, natural, dangerous in ways I was beginning to understand. Later that evening, after presents had been exchanged and enough cookies consumed to alarm medical professionals, It was time for Lily and me to leave. Snow drifted gently across the driveway. The children stood near the front door saying goodbye. Sam shifted nervously from one foot to the other. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me. "Mr. Carter? Yeah, partner?" Silence followed. He swallowed hard, then forced the words out. "Thank you." My chest tightened immediately. Not because of the words. Because of how hard he'd fought to say them. I smiled. "You're welcome, buddy." Sam nodded once. Then, after a second of visible courage, he stepped forward and hugged me. A real hug. Tight. Fierce. The kind children give when they mean something completely. For a moment, nobody moved. Then I glanced up and saw Amelia standing nearby, crying again. Not from sadness. Not from relief. Something bigger. The overwhelming emotion of watching someone you love find their way back to the world. When Lily and I finally drove home, she stared out the window quietly for several minutes. Then she asked, "Dad? Yeah? Do you like Amelia?" I nearly drove into a snowbank. "What?" Lily sighed dramatically. "Adults are so slow." "Lily, you do." I focused very carefully on the road. "Go to sleep. That's not a no." I heard her giggling from the back seat. The problem was that for the first time, I wasn't entirely sure it wasn't a yes, and as snow fell softly across the city, I had absolutely no idea that the coming year was about to test all of us in ways none of us saw coming. Because just when life finally seemed peaceful, the past was preparing to return, and it was coming for Amelia first. The trouble arrived in February wearing a navy suit and carrying a leather briefcase. That's how trouble usually arrives when rich people are involved. Ordinary people get bad news through phone calls. Wealthy people get it delivered by attorneys. I learned this on a Wednesday morning when I pulled Route 12 into Maple Elementary and spotted Amelia standing near the curb. Something was wrong immediately. Not dramatic, not obvious, just wrong. Over the past few months, I'd become good at reading her expressions, the same way you learn weather after living somewhere long enough. Amelia usually carried herself with quiet confidence. This morning she looked tired, distracted, worried. Sam noticed it too. The moment he stepped off the bus, he looked at his mother and frowned. A real frown, concern. Progress had changed him, not completely, but enough that he paid attention now, enough that he cared out loud. Amelia smiled for him anyway. Parents do that. They build entire performances out of love. Sam hugged her and headed toward the school entrance. Then Amelia looked at me. "Can we talk later?" My stomach tightened. "Sure." She nodded once. "Tonight?" "Of course," she smiled. But it didn't reach her eyes. I spent the entire day wondering what happened. By 6 o'clock, I was standing in Amelia's kitchen, while she stared at a stack of legal documents spread across the island counter. The children were upstairs constructing what sounded like either a pillow fort or a small government. It was difficult to tell. Amelia handed me a folder. "My ex-husband." I blinked. "Sam's father?" She nodded. "His parents." Ah, suddenly, everything made sense. Her late husband's parents, the grandparents, the family she'd barely mentioned before. I sat down and opened the folder. Legal filings, custody requests, petitions, formal complaints. My stomach dropped. "They're serious." Amelia laughed bitterly. "Very." Silence followed. Then she rubbed her forehead. "They want partial custody." I looked up. "Why?" The answer arrived immediately. "Because they think I'm failing him." Anger flashed through me before I could stop it. "That's ridiculous." "I know." Another pause. "Unfortunately, they have lawyers." Fair point. Bad one, but fair. I continued reading. The argument centered around Sam's condition, his silence, his emotional struggles, the years after his father's death. The claim was simple. Amelia focused too much on work. She wasn't present enough. They believed Sam would be better off spending significant time with them. I looked at her carefully. Do they actually care about him? Silence followed. Long silence. Then Amelia answered honestly. "Yes." That surprised me. "Really?" She nodded. "They're not bad people, Ethan." Another pause. "They're grieving people." The distinction mattered, because grief makes good people do foolish things. I knew that. Amelia knew that. The problem was that grief with lawyers attached becomes significantly more dangerous. Upstairs, I heard Lily laughing, then Sam laughing too. The sound drifted through the house like sunlight. Amelia heard it as well. Her eyes immediately softened. 6 months ago, that sound didn't exist. I nodded. I know. Another pause. They're using his silence against me. There it was. The real pain. Not the lawsuit, not the legal battle. The injustice. The fact that the hardest years of her life had become evidence in someone else's argument. I hated that. Deeply. What happens now? I asked. Amelia looked toward the documents. Hearings. Another pause. Evaluations. Another pause. Interviews. She laughed softly without humor. A lot of strangers deciding what's best for my son. The next few weeks were awful, not dramatic, just exhausting. Lawyers, meetings, reports, endless paperwork. The kind of conflict that slowly drains people instead of breaking them all at once. Through it all, Sam sensed something was happening. Children always do. He became quieter again, not silent, just cautious, watching, waiting. One afternoon after school, he remained on the bus after every other student had left. I glanced into the mirror. Everything okay, partner? Sam stared at the floor. Silence. Then finally, are they taking me away? My heart nearly stopped. 6 words. 6 devastating words. I pulled the bus to the side of the road and turned around. No. He looked up immediately. Promise? The question hit harder than it should have, because children only ask for promises when they're scared, really scared. I smiled gently. Buddy, your mom loves you more than anything in this world. Silence. Nobody's taking you away. He studied my face carefully. Searching for dishonesty. Children are surprisingly good at that. Finally he nodded. Just once. Then looked out the window. Okay. That night, I told Amelia about the conversation. She cried. Again. Not because she was weak, because being a parent means carrying fears your children should never have to carry themselves. 2 weeks later, the first hearing arrived. Family court. Neutral room. Neutral furniture. Neutral people pretending neutrality exists. Amelia sat beside her attorney. Across the room sat Richard and Margaret Frost. Sam's grandparents. They looked older than I expected. Sadder too. Not villains, just people who had lost a son and couldn't figure out where to put the pain. That somehow made everything worse. The hearing lasted most of the morning. Experts testified. Records were reviewed. Reports were discussed. Then something unexpected happened. The judge requested statements from people directly involved in Sam's daily life. Teachers, counselors, school staff, and eventually, me. I stared at Amelia. Amelia stared at me. The attorney smiled. Congratulations, I frowned. For what? You're about to discover how weird your life has become. He wasn't wrong. What none of us knew was that the testimony I would give that day wasn't the thing that changed the case. The thing that changed the case was a little boy sitting quietly in the hallway outside. A little boy who had spent nearly 2 years finding his voice, and who was finally ready to use it. Family court is one of those places where nobody wants to be. Nobody walks through those doors because life is going well. The hallways are quiet. The conversations are cautious. Even the air feels heavier somehow. I sat outside the courtroom waiting for my turn to testify while attorneys moved back and forth carrying folders thick enough to stop bullets. Amelia sat a few chairs away reviewing documents with her lawyer. She looked calm from a distance. She wasn't. I knew her well enough by then to see the signs. The way she tapped her thumb against her palm. The way she reread the same page without actually seeing it. The way she kept glancing toward the hallway where Sam was sitting with a court-appointed child advocate. Fear changes people, even strong people, especially strong people. The hearing resumed shortly after lunch. Teachers spoke first. They described Sam's progress, his return to classroom participation, his improved confidence, his friendships, his growing ability to communicate. Then, the school counselor testified. Then, the therapist. One by one, they painted the same picture. A child recovering, slowly, imperfectly, but undeniably recovering. Finally, my name was called. I walked to the witness stand feeling deeply unqualified for whatever was happening. The judge smiled politely. "Mr. Carter, you're a school bus driver?" "Yes, Your Honor." "How long have you known Samuel Frost?" "About 18 months. The questions began. Simple at first. My observations, his behavior, his progress. Then the attorney representing the grandparents stood. "Mr. Carter, are you a licensed therapist?" "No." "Psychologist?" "No." "Medical professional?" "No." "Then what exactly qualifies you to evaluate Samuel's emotional development?" Ah, there it was. I considered the question carefully, then answered honestly. "Nothing." The attorney looked surprised. So did several people in the room. I continued. "I'm not evaluating him." Silence followed. "I'm just paying attention." The courtroom became quiet. The attorney frowned. "Paying attention?" I nodded. "Yes." Another pause. Most adults looked at Sam and saw a problem that needed solving. Silence. I looked at him and saw a kid riding my bus. The attorney didn't seem sure what to do with that answer. Honestly, neither did I. The judge leaned forward slightly. "Interested now," I continued. "Children know when they're being studied." Another pause. "They know when they're being measured." Another pause. "And they definitely know when people are disappointed in them." Complete silence filled the room. Sam spent a long time feeling broken. Another pause. The moment that started changing was the moment people stopped treating him that way. Nobody spoke, not even the attorneys, because suddenly we weren't discussing custody anymore. We were discussing a child. The hearing paused shortly afterward. I returned to my seat beside Amelia. She looked at me for several seconds, then whispered, "You realize you're terrible at being a bus driver?" I frowned. "What does that mean?" "You keep accidentally helping people." I laughed softly. "Occupational hazard." Amelia smiled despite herself. Then something unexpected happened. The child advocate entered the courtroom carrying a note. She approached the judge directly. Quiet conversation followed. The judge looked surprised, then thoughtful, then toward the attorneys. Finally, she addressed the room. "Samuel Frost would like to speak." Silence exploded across the courtroom. Complete silence. Amelia froze. Richard and Margaret Frost froze. Every attorney in the room froze, because everyone understood the significance immediately. Sam had spent nearly 2 years struggling to speak. Nobody expected this. Least of all Amelia. The judge looked toward the door. "Only if he's comfortable." A moment later, Sam entered. My heart nearly stopped. He looked nervous, terrified, honestly. But he kept walking, one step at a time. The child advocate stayed beside him, not leading, just supporting. Sam sat in a chair near the judge's bench. The courtroom remained silent. Nobody wanted to break whatever courage had brought him there. The judge smiled gently. "Hello, Samuel." Sam nodded. Silence followed. Then another silence. Then another. Nobody rushed him. Nobody pressured him. Finally he spoke. Quietly. "Hi." Amelia closed her eyes immediately. I saw tears forming before she even realized it. The judge smiled. "Thank you for being here." Sam nodded again. Another pause. Then the judge asked a simple question. "Do you know why we're meeting today?" Sam looked down at his hands, then back up, because everybody's worried. A few people laughed softly, even the judge, because honestly, that was the most accurate summary of the entire situation. The judge nodded. "That's fair." Then she asked the question everyone had been waiting for. "Is there anything you'd like us to know?" The courtroom became perfectly still. Sam swallowed hard. I could practically see him gathering courage, piece by piece, word by word. Then he looked toward his grandparents, Richard and Margaret, 2 people who clearly loved him, 2 people who were clearly hurting. His voice trembled slightly. "I love Grandma and Grandpa." Margaret began crying immediately. Sam continued anyway, "And I miss Dad too." More tears, more silence, more heartbreak. Then he looked toward Amelia, his mother, the woman who had spent 2 years carrying the weight of his pain. "But I want to stay with Mom." Complete silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Sam took another shaky breath, then delivered the sentence that ended the case. "She stayed too." The words landed like thunder. Amelia covered her mouth. Richard lowered his head. Margaret openly sobbed. Even the attorneys looked affected, because everyone understood exactly what Sam meant. His father hadn't chosen to leave. Tragedy had taken him away, but Amelia had remained, through every bad day, every silent day, every painful day. She stayed. Sam looked toward the judge one final time. She never left. Silence filled the courtroom. Beautiful. Devastating silence. The judge thanked him softly. The hearing ended less than 20 minutes later. Nobody needed additional testimony after that. Nobody needed more evidence. The truth had already been spoken, and it came from the only person whose opinion truly mattered. As we left the courthouse that afternoon, Amelia knelt beside her son and wrapped him in the tightest hug I'd ever seen. Sam hugged her back just as fiercely. For a moment, the rest of the world disappeared. Lawyers, judges, arguments. None of it mattered. Then Sam looked up and saw me standing nearby. He smiled. A real smile. Bright, confident, present, and for the first time since I met him, I realized he wasn't coming back anymore. He was already here. What none of us knew was that the next challenge wasn't waiting in a courtroom. It was waiting inside Amelia's company. And unlike the custody battle, this one was going to threaten everything she had spent years building. Trouble arrived on a Monday morning disguised as success. That's the thing about corporate disasters. They rarely announce themselves honestly. If they did, people would avoid them. Instead, they usually show up wearing expensive suits and carrying PowerPoint presentations full of good news. I learned this when Amelia called me at 6:30 in the morning. "Are you awake?" she asked. "I drive a school bus." Fair point. Something in her voice immediately caught my attention. Not fear. Frustration. "What's wrong?" Silence followed. Then she laughed softly. "The company had its best quarter in 3 years." I frowned. "That sounds terrible." Exactly. By the time I finished my morning route, financial news was already covering the story. Frost Dynamics had announced record growth. New international contracts. Expanded market share. Rising stock prices. Investors loved it. Analysts loved it. The board loved it. Everyone loved it except Amelia. That seemed suspicious. We met for lunch near company headquarters. The moment I sat down, she slid a stack of reports across the table. "Look at page 14. I stared at her. "You know I drive a bus, right?" Amelia smiled. "And you know I stopped believing that explanation months ago." "Fair enough." I opened the report. Numbers, charts, forecasts, corporate jargon designed by people who hated readability. "Amelia, page 14. I sighed dramatically and turned the page. Then I saw it. Even I saw it. Revenue was climbing. Expenses looked stable. Profit margins looked excellent. Yet one category kept growing faster than everything else. Personnel reductions, outsourcing, automation. My stomach tightened. "Oh." Amelia nodded. "Exactly." Silence followed. "How many jobs?" I asked quietly. 3,000 this year. The number sat heavily between us. 3,000 families. 3,000 lives. 3,000 people transformed into a line item on a spreadsheet. The board wants more. Another pause. Much more. I looked up. "And you don't." Amelia laughed softly. "I built this company." Silence. "I know the names of people in those reports." Another pause. "They know the names of their children." The problem became obvious immediately. The board saw efficiency. Amelia saw people. Unfortunately, efficiency tends to win arguments in corporate environments. That afternoon, she attended a board meeting. That evening, she called me from her office. "How bad?" I asked. Long silence. Victor wasn't the only problem. My stomach dropped. "There are more?" "Several." Another pause. "They want a new CEO." I sat up straighter. "What?" "Not immediately." Another pause. "But they're preparing." Suddenly, everything made sense. The strong quarter, the pressure, the obsession with margins. Amelia wasn't failing. She was resisting. And resistance makes powerful people nervous. Can they do it? Silence followed. Maybe. I stared out the window of my kitchen. Upstairs, Lily and Sam were working on homework. The sound of their voices drifted faintly through the house. Normal life. The kind Amelia was trying to protect for thousands of other families. "What are you going to do?" I asked. Amelia's answer arrived immediately. "Fight." Of course she was. The next few weeks became a blur of meetings, negotiations, and pressure. The board wanted deeper cuts. Amelia refused. Investors demanded higher returns. Amelia pushed back. Financial media began speculating openly about leadership changes. Every headline made things worse. Through it all, Sam noticed. Children always notice. One evening I found him sitting quietly on my back porch while Lily chased fireflies across the yard. "Everything okay?" I asked. He shrugged. Not convincing. I sat beside him. Silence settled comfortably between us. Then he asked, "Mom's sad." Not a question. An observation. A little. He nodded slowly. "Work?" I smiled. "Work." Another pause. Then Sam looked toward the grass. "Can I help?" The question nearly broke my heart. Because children always want to help. Even when the problems are too large for them to carry. I thought about my answer carefully. Then I smiled. "Actually." He looked up immediately. "Maybe." 2 days later, Frost Dynamics held its annual employee town hall. Thousands attended in person. Thousands more watched online. The board expected a carefully managed presentation about growth and performance. They got something very different. Near the end of the event, Amelia stepped onto the stage alone. No executives beside her, no prepared script, just a microphone. The room quieted immediately. Amelia looked tired, determined, honest. The way people look when they've decided they're done pretending. "For months," she began, "I've been told that leadership means making difficult decisions." Silence followed. "That's true." Another pause. But somewhere along the way, people started confusing difficult decisions with easy sacrifices. The audience became very quiet. Board members shifted uncomfortably in the front row. Amelia continued, "It's easy to cut jobs when you don't know the people losing them." Another pause. "It's easy to close offices when you've never visited them." Another pause. "It's easy to treat human beings like expenses when you've forgotten they're human beings." Complete silence filled the auditorium. Then she did something nobody expected. She invited employees onto the stage. Not executives. Employees. A software engineer, a customer support representative, a maintenance technician, a single mother from accounting. Real people, real stories, real lives. One by one, they spoke. About families, about challenges, about what their jobs meant beyond paychecks. The audience listened. The board looked horrified. By the time the event ended, something had changed. Not in the company. In the conversation, the story was no longer about quarterly profits. It was about people, and people are much harder to reduce to spreadsheets. That night, Amelia came to my house exhausted. She sat on the porch while the kids played inside. "How bad was it?" I asked. She laughed. "I may have started a war." "Corporate war?" "The worst kind." We sat quietly for several minutes. Then Amelia smiled faintly. "You know what the funny part is?" "What?" She looked toward the living room window where Sam and Lily were laughing together. 6 months ago, I thought I was fighting to get my son back. Silence followed. Turns out he was teaching me how to get myself back. I didn't have a response for that, because sometimes the truth arrives fully formed. The only thing left to do is accept it. What neither of us realized was that the board had already made its move. And before the month ended, Amelia Frost would face the biggest decision of her entire career, one that would determine not only the future of her company, but the future of our lives together. The board made its move on a Thursday morning. Appropriately enough, they chose a day Amelia was supposed to be celebrating. Frost Dynamics had just secured the largest contract in company history. The stock price climbed another 8% before the opening bell. Financial networks praised the company's leadership. Analysts predicted record growth. Everything looked perfect from the outside, which is usually when the most dangerous problems appear. I was finishing my morning route when my phone buzzed. Amelia. The moment I answered, I knew. They did it. Silence followed. Did what? Even though I already suspected the answer, Amelia laughed softly. Not because anything was funny. The board scheduled a confidence vote. My stomach tightened. When? Tomorrow. Of course. No warning. No time. No opportunity to prepare. Corporate politics tends to move quickly when powerful people are afraid. Who? I asked. 3 directors formally supported it. Another pause. 2 more are undecided. I leaned back in my seat after the last student left the bus. What do they want? Amelia's answer arrived immediately. Someone willing to make deeper cuts. There it was. The entire conflict reduced to a single sentence. Profit versus people, numbers versus names, efficiency versus responsibility. The oldest argument in business. The problem was that Amelia no longer seemed interested in pretending those things were separate. That evening, she came over for dinner. Lily and Sam were working on a school project involving cardboard, glue, and an alarming disregard for structural engineering. The dining room table looked like a craft store had exploded. Amelia sat quietly while the children worked, watching, thinking. Finally, Lily looked up. "You're doing the worry face." Amelia blinked. "The what?" "The worry face." Lily pointed directly at her. "Right there." I laughed. Amelia groaned. "I have a worry face?" "Absolutely," Lily said. "Dad has one too." "I do not." Both children looked at me simultaneously. "You do," they said together. "Traitors. Every single one of them." Amelia laughed for the first time all day. Then Sam surprised everyone. He looked directly at his mother and asked, "Can they fire you?" The room became quiet. Amelia set down her fork. She could have avoided the question, could have softened it, could have changed the subject. Instead, she chose honesty. "Maybe." Sam thought about that, then asked, "Did you do something bad?" Amelia immediately shook her head. "No." Another pause. "Then why?" The simplicity of childhood is ruthless sometimes. Why? Not the legal reason, not the financial reason, the real reason. Amelia smiled sadly. "Because some people think I care about the wrong things." Silence followed. Sam frowned. "Like me?" My heart nearly stopped. Amelia's eyes filled instantly. She reached across the table and took his hand. "Exactly like you." Complete silence. Then she shook her head firmly. "And they're wrong." Sam stared at her for several seconds, then nodded once, apparently satisfied. Children often reach conclusions adults spend years chasing. The next day arrived cold and gray. The confidence vote was scheduled for 10 o'clock. By 9:30, the entire business world seemed to know about it. News crews gathered outside headquarters. Investors flooded financial networks with speculation. Social media exploded with rumors. Frost Dynamics wasn't just a company anymore. It was a story. And stories attract audiences. I wasn't supposed to be there. Bus drivers generally don't attend corporate board meetings. Yet somehow, at 9:45, I found myself sitting in the back row of a conference room overlooking the city. Amelia sat at the head of the table, calm, composed, determined. The directors filled the remaining seats. Some avoided eye contact, others didn't. The chairman called the meeting to order. Formalities followed, procedures, statements, legal language. Then the discussion began. For nearly an hour, directors debated strategy, growth targets, margins, efficiency metrics, future projections. The usual corporate vocabulary designed to describe human lives without mentioning humans. Amelia listened carefully, occasionally responding, occasionally challenging assumptions, never raising her voice, never losing her composure. Finally, one director leaned forward. "The issue isn't growth." Silence followed. "The issue is priorities." There it was. Amelia nodded. "I agree." The director seemed surprised. Amelia continued. "I think our priorities are exactly the issue." Complete silence filled the room. Another director spoke. "Shareholder value must come first." Amelia looked at him calmly. "Without employees, there is no shareholder value." Silence. "Without customers, there is no shareholder value." Another pause. "Without trust, there is no shareholder value." Nobody spoke, because she wasn't wrong. The problem was that being right doesn't always guarantee victory. Eventually, the chairman called for the vote. My stomach tightened. One by one, directors announced their decisions. Support. Oppose. Support. Oppose. The count remained close. Far too close. Finally, only one undecided director remained, a woman named Karen Mitchell, former engineer, respected throughout the industry. She had remained silent for most of the meeting. Now everyone waited. Karen looked around the room slowly, then folded her hands. I've spent 3 weeks reviewing performance data. Silence followed. Financial data. Another pause. Operational data. Another pause. Cultural data. The room became perfectly still. Karen looked directly at Amelia. The company is stronger today than it was a year ago. Another pause. Not despite your leadership. Another pause. Because of it. Complete silence. Then she cast her vote. Support. Just like that, the motion failed. The room erupted. Some directors looked relieved. Others looked furious. Reporters outside somehow learned the result before the meeting even ended. My phone began vibrating almost immediately with news alerts. Amelia remained seated, not celebrating, not smiling, just breathing, as though she had been carrying a weight for months, and finally set it down. Later that afternoon, after the crowds dispersed and the cameras disappeared, I found her standing alone on the rooftop terrace above headquarters. The city stretched endlessly below us. "Congratulations," I said. Amelia smiled faintly. "I'm not sure that's the right word." "Why?" She looked toward the skyline. "Because I almost lost." Silence followed. Then I shook my head. "No," she glanced at me. "No, you already won." Another pause. "You just didn't know it yet." Amelia stared at me for several seconds, then laughed softly. "You know that's an annoyingly wise thing to say, right? Occupational hazard." She smiled. Then neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, Amelia looked toward the horizon and asked a question that changed everything. "Ethan?" "Yeah?" Her voice softened. "What if I don't want to do this forever?" I frowned. "Run the company?" She nodded. Silence followed. Because suddenly this wasn't about boardrooms anymore. It wasn't about investors. It wasn't about corporate battles. It was about life. About choices. About what comes after survival. And standing there above the city, I realized Amelia Frost was about to make a decision far more important than keeping her job. She was about to decide what kind of future she actually wanted. Amelia's question stayed with me for days, maybe because I knew she wasn't really asking about the company. Not entirely. When people ask whether they want to keep doing something forever, they're usually asking a different question. They're asking whether the life they've built is still the life they want. The company just happened to be the visible part. Spring arrived slowly that year. The snow disappeared. Trees regained their leaves. Children spent more time outdoors than inside. Life moved forward the way it always does, completely indifferent to corporate drama. Amelia remained CEO. The board stopped challenging her every 5 minutes. Frost Dynamics continued growing. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Yet something had changed. I noticed it first during a Saturday afternoon soccer game. Lily and Sam were both playing, poorly, enthusiastically, the combination that makes youth sports entertaining. Amelia sat beside me on the bleachers holding a cup of coffee. For most of the game, neither of us paid much attention to the score. We watched the kids instead. Sam had changed so much that it was sometimes difficult to remember the boy who spent 18 months staring silently out a bus window. Now he laughed openly, talked freely, argued with referees when he felt justice required intervention. In other words, he had become a normal child again. Amelia smiled as he sprinted across the field. "He talks too much now. That's your punishment." "Apparently." Another pause. "Worth it." We sat quietly for a moment. Then she surprised me. "I met with the board yesterday." I glanced toward her. "How'd that go?" Amelia laughed softly. "I offered them a succession plan." My eyebrows rose immediately. "You, what?" "Nothing immediate." Another pause. "Nothing dramatic." Another pause. "But I told them I won't be CEO forever." Silence followed. "How'd they react?" She smiled. "Poorly." That seemed about right. The board had spent years treating Amelia like she was inseparable from the company. The idea that she might willingly walk away probably sounded absurd. To them, anyway, not to me, because I understood something they didn't. Amelia never loved power. She loved building things. There was a difference. A month later, she made another announcement. This one public. Frost Dynamics would launch a nationwide initiative providing mental health resources to children recovering from trauma and loss. The program would be funded personally by Amelia, not through the company, not through investors, through her. The media loved it. Shareholders were confused by it. Parents across the country embraced it immediately. Most importantly, Sam approved. Good idea, he informed her over dinner. Amelia looked amused. Thank you. You're welcome. Then he returned to his spaghetti, as though he routinely advised CEOs, which, technically, he did. Summer arrived. Then August. Then September. Before any of us realized it, nearly 2 years had passed since Sam first climbed onto my bus and sat silently in the third row on the right side. One afternoon, as I finished my final route of the day, he remained behind after every other student left. Not unusual anymore. Sometimes he wanted to talk. Sometimes he just liked sitting on the bus for a few extra minutes. "What's up, partner?" I asked. Sam considered the question carefully, then smiled. "Nothing." "That's suspicious." He laughed, then looked around the bus. The same seats, the same windows, the same worn floor. "Do you remember when I first got on here?" My chest tightened slightly. "I do." Silence followed. Then Sam surprised me. I was scared, not because of the words, because of how calmly he said them. No shame, no fear, just truth. "I know." He nodded. "I thought if I talked." Another pause. "Something bad would happen." I stayed quiet. Some thoughts deserve room. Sam stared out the window briefly, then looked back at me. "Nothing bad happened." I smiled. "Nope." He smiled too. "Good." That night, Amelia invited Lily and me to dinner. Nothing unusual. We had become family in every way that mattered, even if nobody had officially said it out loud yet. The evening felt normal, comfortable, familiar, which is why what happened afterward caught me completely off guard. The kids were upstairs watching a movie. Amelia and I sat on the back patio beneath strings of lights hanging over the garden. The night air was warm. Crickets chirped somewhere nearby. Finally, Amelia looked toward me. "Do you know what Sam told me this morning?" I shook my head. She smiled softly. "He said he doesn't remember what it felt like not to talk." Silence followed. The kind of silence that arrives after a miracle finally settles into reality. Amelia stared out across the yard. For a long time, I thought success meant saving him. Another pause. Then I thought success meant saving the company. Another pause. Now I think success is much simpler. I smiled. "Yeah?" She looked directly at me. "Coming home to people you love." The words settled between us. Honest. Clear. Impossible to misunderstand. My pulse quickened immediately. Amelia laughed softly. That sounded less terrifying in my head. I couldn't help smiling. A little terrifying. Good. Another pause. Then she reached for my hand. Because I meant it. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Neither of us looked away. 2 years earlier, she had been the CEO everyone admired from a distance. I had been a bus driver living a quiet life with his daughter. Neither of us planned this. Neither of us expected it. Yet somehow here we were. Finally, I squeezed her hand gently. "Good." Amelia smiled. The real smile. The one that changed everything. And for the first time, neither of us needed to pretend we didn't know where this story was heading. What neither of us realized was that the biggest surprise wasn't waiting for us. It was waiting for the children. And before the year ended, Sam and Lily were going to make a decision that would leave both of us completely speechless. The surprise arrived on a Sunday afternoon in early December. By then, nearly 2 years had passed since Sam Frost first stepped onto bus Route 12, carrying enough grief to silence an entire childhood. Frost Dynamics was thriving. Amelia had begun gradually transitioning daily operations to a new leadership team. The Children's Mental Health Foundation she created was helping thousands of families across the country. Life wasn't perfect. Real life never is. But it was good. Deeply, genuinely good. Which is why neither Amelia nor I suspected anything was happening. Looking back, we should have. Children become suspiciously cooperative when they're planning something. We just missed the signs. The first clue came when Lily volunteered to clean her room. The second came when Sam willingly helped. The third came when neither of them asked for anything in return. Any experienced parent would have recognized this as evidence of a developing conspiracy. Unfortunately, Amelia and I were distracted. We were sitting at the kitchen table discussing holiday plans when the children appeared. Lily carried a folder. Sam carried what looked like a presentation board. My parental instincts immediately activated. "What did you do?" Lily looked offended. "Nothing. That's not reassuring." Amelia laughed. "What's going on?" Sam and Lily exchanged a glance. Then Lily cleared her throat dramatically. "We've made a decision." I stared. Amelia stared. Nobody likes hearing those words from children carrying presentation materials. Lily opened the folder. "We've done research." "That's even worse." Sam laughed. Lily ignored me. "We think you should get married." Complete silence. Absolute silence. Amelia nearly dropped her coffee. I stared at the children. The children stared back, apparently very pleased with themselves. "Excuse me?" Amelia managed. Lily pointed toward the presentation board. "We have evidence." Of course they did. Sam stepped forward and flipped the board around. Charts, photographs, bullet points, actual bullet points. The first section was labeled Reasons. The second section was labeled More Reasons. The third section was labeled Obvious Reasons. I closed my eyes briefly. Amelia looked like she was trying not to laugh. "You made a slideshow?" she asked. "Technically a visual presentation," Sam corrected. I couldn't even be surprised anymore. The kid had spent 2 years silent and apparently planned to compensate for lost time. Lily pointed at a photograph of all of us from a recent foundation event. "You already act married, Lily." "It's true," Sam nodded. "Very true." Another page revealed a list titled Supporting Evidence, Family Dinners, School Events, Holidays, Vacations, Movie Nights, Charity Projects, Birthday Parties. I had no idea children were capable of building legal cases. Amelia covered her face with one hand. "I cannot believe this is happening." "We practiced," Lily informed her, clearly. Then came the final page. At the top, in large handwritten letters, were the words, "Family isn't supposed to be complicated." Silence followed. Not awkward silence. Emotional silence. The kind that arrives when someone accidentally says something profoundly true. Sam looked toward me. Then Amelia. Then quietly said, "We're already a family." Nobody spoke, because he was right. Somewhere along the way, without contracts or announcements or official decisions, we'd become exactly that, a family. Amelia looked at me. I looked at her. Then Lily groaned dramatically. "See? See what?" I asked. "The look." "What look?" "The one where you stare at each other and forget everyone else exists." Sam nodded. "Very suspicious behavior." Amelia laughed so hard she almost cried. Eventually the children were sent outside so the adults could supposedly discuss things privately. The moment the door closed behind them, we both burst out laughing. Real laughter, the kind that leaves you breathless. When it finally faded, silence settled between us again. Different this time, softer. Amelia looked toward the backyard where Sam and Lily were building a snowman. "They're impossible. Absolutely." Another pause. Then she smiled. "They're also right." My heart skipped. Amelia looked down briefly before meeting my eyes again. 2 years ago, I thought I was losing everything. Silence followed. Then a bus driver kept saying good morning to my son. I laughed softly. "That seems like an oversimplification." "Maybe." She reached for my hand, but not by much. We sat there quietly watching the children through the window. Sam laughing. Lily giving instructions. The snowman suffering from obvious management problems. Life. Ordinary, beautiful life. Finally I stood and walked to the back door. Amelia looked up. "Where are you going?" I smiled. "To talk to the project managers." A few minutes later, we joined the children in the yard. Snow fell gently around us. The afternoon sky glowed pale gold. Lily looked immediately suspicious. "Why are you smiling?" "Because I have an announcement." Sam stopped working on the snowman. Amelia shook her head. "You're enjoying this." "A little." Then I looked at both children. "Your presentation was very persuasive," Lily gasped. Sam's eyes widened. Amelia laughed beside me. I reached for her hand, and after careful review, dramatic pause. Children deserve dramatic pauses. I think we agree. For 1 second, complete silence. Then chaos. Pure chaos. Lily screamed. Sam actually jumped. Amelia laughed. I laughed. The snowman suffered catastrophic structural failure. Nobody cared. Because sometimes the happiest moments aren't complicated. Sometimes they're simply 4 people standing in a snowy backyard realizing they found exactly what they needed when they weren't looking for it. 1 year later, Amelia officially stepped down as CEO and became chairwoman of the foundation she created. Frost Dynamics continued thriving under new leadership. Sam became a confident, funny teenager who talked constantly. Lily remained convinced she was the smartest person in every room. Occasionally she was right. As for me, I still drove bus route 12. Because some things don't need changing. Every morning, I greeted the children the same way. Every afternoon, I drove them home. And every evening, I returned to the family that began with a silent little boy sitting in the 3rd row on the right side of a school bus. People often ask how Sam found his voice again. They expect a complicated answer. Therapy techniques, clinical breakthroughs, some profound secret. The truth is much simpler. He found people who loved him long enough to wait, and in the end, that turned out to be all he needed. The end.